This is Trash Panda Publishing. Thank you for joining our podcast, where raccoons talk about books and publishing, and of course, anything related to raccoons. I'm your host, David James. You know what? We have never actually led with raccoon information, and today we are going to do that. How many of you actually know what the word raccoon even means? It comes from the Latin word meaning procyon lotor, which means washerman. And the reason for that is because if you watch a raccoon eating, they often are known or look like they're washing their food before they eat, and that's where they get their name from. The Latin word is procyon lotor, the washerman. So you cannot accuse the raccoon for being trash. Well, I guess you can. They maybe eat trash, but they do wash it before they eat it. And that is our raccoon piece of trivia for the day. Oh, actually, more trivia. They are primarily live in the continental U.S., mostly in the Rocky Mountains. Well, sorry, except in the Rocky Mountains and the deserts. They do live in Canada and Central America, but I guess they're pretty much North American animals, and they're not really known for other parts of the world, if you would believe the internet. The reason they have the black masks on their face, so they look like bandits, is to reflect or deflect the sun's glare, supposedly to enhance their night vision, also to make them look super cool. That's probably the main reason. And they're super intelligent. Well, of course they are. Crimson Jack Acorn is very, very smart. I don't know how they measure intelligence in animals. We should have some. If you're a scientist and you know how they measure animal intelligence, please message me. Come on the show. Tell us how they do it. I mean, do they capture the animals and give them a test? Remember that hustler that we had the other day where he told me that he won a very rigorous test? I don't know how you win a test, but I'd love to hear about that. But you know what? I've already failed here because this is episode 22 of our podcast, and my listening audience really hasn't grown past 30. And I don't know if I care or not, but I was wondering, what does it take to succeed in a podcast? So I went to ChatGPT and I asked, what does a successful podcast have? And it told me you have to have a hook, and you need to capture people within the first 60 seconds to make them hang around and stay. Well, I guess before you can even have a hook, you have to have people like listening for the first 1 second before you can get to the hook. But what it suggested was you say something outlandish so people go, well, I've got to stay to the very end to hear what that is. So I'm going to say something ridiculously outlandish. I'm going to tell you a dirty joke, a super dirty joke at the end of the show. And I don't usually tell dirty jokes on this show, so if you want to hear a very, very dirty joke, stay to the very end. Okay, but what we are going to talk about today is the formula for fantasy books. What does it, in my opinion, what do you need to succeed in writing a fantasy book? And this might be true for really any fiction book, but certainly for fantasy. I read a ton of fantasy books, and I wrote one, of course, and some of them stink. So we're going to talk about what ones that that are bestsellers, what makes them bestsellers versus the ones that are duds. We're also going to talk about hybrid publishing. What is it and who is it for? And then we're going to read a book or a chapter from Cinderella, a love story. Not the original one, but a redo written by Gina. Let me see if I can pronounce her last name. I actually went on Google because I butcher people's last names. I'm going to pause this so I can go double check this. Okay, it's Gina LoBiondo. Now, if that's not a hook right there, I'm going to butcher someone's name on the podcast. Stay tuned. Maybe someone will stay and listen. It's Gina LoBiondo. I actually did a blog on her and her writing back on when did I do that? I'll put a link to this blog that I did on her on davejames.com. She's written a number of books, actually. And some of them are fairy tale redos about bears and dragons and Cinderella. She loves Star Trek. She's been writing since 1973. And she was making up stories when she was 13 years old. Her and her brother would they basically take favorite movies and book characters, and they would recreate scenarios for them, role-playing basically, making up stories. And she would make up stories about Captain Kirk. And I used to do the same thing, by the way. I would wear sweatpants and like a turtleneck and rubber boots. Remember those of you who remember when your mom would make you wear rubber boots to school when it was raining? Well, those looked a lot like Star Trek boots. And if you wore sweatpants and tucked them in and let the sweatpants sort of hang over the rubber boots, it looked an awful lot like Star Trek pants. And if you wore a turtleneck, you look like a Star Trek person. I would wear that outfit to school. Do not judge me. And then my grandfather, who was a woodworker, would go in his garage and I would draw on plywood the shape of the Star Trek phasers. I remember those little guns. And he would cut them out for me, sand them down, and I would paint them black with the silver tip. And he would then put a little hook on it, like a metal hook, so I could hang it on my belt. Now, sweatpants don't need a belt, but I would wear a belt anyways, so I could hang the phaser on my belt. He also would cut out, basically from plywood as well, a communicator, and using a hinge, he would attach another piece of like plastic so the communicator would open, again, all sanded down, and I would paint these things so it looked like a communicator. And I literally wore this outfit to school regularly, I'd say once a week, because I love Captain Kirk. Captain Kirk was my hero, still is my hero. In fact, I will cry when William Shatner dies, because he was so, obviously not him, although he did portray James T. Kirk, but that character was so influential on my life as a child. He was like the Lone Ranger for my parents. Anyways, Gina, did the same thing. And so I totally get her. And so that's how she started writing stories, and she continued her adult life, and she's written a number of, looks like children's books, Pegasus and a Dragon Tale, which is an illustrated children's book. She wrote another one called Button Noose, a sad little bear story. Looks like about a stuffed bear. And she has written Cinderella, a love story, which we will read chapter 6 today. So that's coming as well. And then, of course, we'll have the Crimson and Ava show. And I don't know what I'm going to do. It's always improv. So when we get there, I will make it up when we get there. So what did I say we were doing first? I can't even remember. Oh, yes, the formula for what makes a good fantasy novel. Well, let me tell you what doesn't make a good fantasy novel, and then I'll tell you, I think, what does make a good fantasy novel. I've read a lot of fantasy novels in the last couple of years, in the last year, for what is called ARC, Advanced Reader's Copy. It's basically new artists or new authors who are writing generally their first book, just like I did, and you want feedback. There's lots of websites where you can do this. There's Facebook groups where you ask other people to read and give you comments. And sometimes they're beautifully written. The description of the, forest or castle is wonderful. It's, great adjectives. It looks nice or, sounds nice. The characters, however, are boring. Everyone gets along. The dialogue is like, good morning. Well, good morning to you. And then they have breakfast and they describe this breakfast in detail and they sip their coffee and then they go outside and they look at the flowers. And it's like pages of this. Now, look, Tolkien got away with doing that. And I think he's the only one who can get away with doing that because it is literally boring. Today, if Tolkien wrote, in my opinion, and don't shoot me for this, but I don't know if The Lord of the Rings would resonate the way it does today if he dropped that book today. I'm not talking about The Hobbit. I'm talking about some of the Lord of the Rings stuff. Yes, it's classic and it's wonderful literature, but it's literature and it's not fast moving enough for what I think the audiences today want. It just bogs down too much in details. Now, I still love it, but too much of what I'm reading now is There's no conflict. There's no banter. It's not realistic. Nobody talks like that in real life. They just don't. There's no smart mouth. I don't want people to be rude to each other, but I don't find it interesting. I don't care about the color of their tunics while they're drinking coffee for 5 pages. A lot of times also these books don't really lay out any kind of stakes. The bad guys or the villains aren't introduced at all until much later, or they're introduced immediately during breakfast as if, the person comes down the stairs and someone says, "Good morning." And the other person says, "Do you know the kingdom's at war and we're all going to die tomorrow at noon?" "Oh, great. Well, let me have a scrambled egg and then we'll go deal with it." As if it's like a no big deal. To me, you have to develop a story arc. And there's formulas for this. What I'm saying here is nothing special. There's about 23 or 25 different formulas for story arcs. And you need a clear point of view when you write one of these things. The main character has to have a hero's journey, and too many of these stories do not have hero's journeys. Your characters cannot end the book the same way they start the book. They have to change in some way or another. If you don't do that, your story is flat and boring. And too many of these books, there is no character development at all. There might be some action. That's good. You need action. But there has to be character growth. And the characters generally need to be flawed. Your characters cannot be perfect. That's boring. Think about DC Comics versus Marvel, for any of you who are comic fans. The criticism of DC Comics for years, and they finally got better, but Superman was perfect. He was flawless. He couldn't be hurt, other than kryptonite. Yeah, I get it. Kryptonite would weaken him, but he was a goody two-shoes. He always rescued everyone. He never did anything wrong. He couldn't be beaten. The bad guys never stood a chance. That is boring. Now, compare that to Marvel. Pretty much every bad guy or every good guy had some huge character flaw. They were either greedy or poor, or their powers didn't really work that well, or the bad guys were always better or had some sort of leverage over the hero. The characters almost always had some sort of love story where their love was spurned or they couldn't reveal who they were because of their secret identity. Yeah, Superman had a secret identity, but it never seemed to be a problem, ever. The difference is between Marvel and DC is Marvel really understood the concept of flawed heroes and leaned into it. And if you read Marvel comics, you were always just agonized about the hero. Is he really going to win, or is she really going to win? Is that love story ever going to happen? Is he or she ever going to really reveal their secret identity? And they drug us on for issue after issue after issue. We kept buying them because we wanted to find out. DC, not so much. Boring. And take it back to fantasy. Too many fantasy books, same thing. Boring. Give me banter. Give me conflict. Give me epic odds. Make the villains bad. Make them insurmountable. Make me hate them. Too many of these books do not do that. Think about Star Wars. Darth Vader was unbeatable. Luke Skywalker was a flawed hero, couldn't barely even hold a lightsaber. And the chances of Luke Skywalker beating Darth Vader are pretty much zero. It needs to be like that. It needs to be insurmountable. The Empire versus this ragtag group of rebels. Fantasy stories need to be the same way. It needs to be insurmountable. So if you're writing a fantasy book and you do not have a hero's journey where your hero starts in some flawed, broken place, and you have not told us and set up the villains or the obstacles as insurmountable, you've done something wrong. If you do not take us along a journey where your side characters are interesting, you're doing something wrong. You cannot give us flat characters without some contrast. There has to be contrast in your books, in my opinion, or the books are boring. Do not have everybody get along. Do not have your characters immediately fall in love and start kissing by chapter 2. I've read books just recently where the main character runs into, like, I would call it the second main character, and I can tell immediately they're going to be a love story. That's fine. You can foreshadow that. But literally by 2 chapters later, they're kissing and like swearing that they're their love soulmates, and they're like suddenly married. What? Okay, you can give that to me at the end of the book, but don't give it to me at chapter 3. Make them work for it. Make somebody interfere with that relationship. Make it a forbidden love. Make a spurned lover show up and make somebody jealous. Do not make it easy. It's not interesting fiction if it's everything's too easy. So that's my comment about fiction that's failing and fiction that's successful. Okay, on to hybrid publishing. So in in Publishers Weekly, there is an article here about hybrid publishing. And first of all, what is hybrid publishing? Well, I guess to answer that, you have to start with what is traditional publishing. Traditional publishing is like Simon & Schuster, Random House, Penguin. These are what it used to be. Years ago, if you were Stephen King or John Grisham or Robert Jordan, big-time authors, really any authors back in the day, you would write a book, you would get an agent, the agent would shop your book to the big houses, really the only way to get published. And if you were lucky, you would get a contract, you would get signed, if you will, to a publishing house. The same way that musicians would get signed to record labels. And they would give you a contract, and the contract would say something like, we'll give you an advance on your book, let's say $50,000. It is a loan. So for those of you who are thinking that you're getting paid for the book, that is not true. It is a loan. Yes, the author is getting the money up front, but it is basically an advancement of royalties. The publishing company is saying, look, we think you're going to sell a ton of books, so we're going to give you $50,000 now. We then have rights to the book. Now, the terms of the contract about who owns the book, those are all going to be contained in the contract. The author generally will retain the rights to the book. They would be foolish to give up the actual real ownership of the book. Now, there are musicians that have done that. Taylor Swift is an example of someone who actually lost control of her masters. Billy Joel had the same problem. And so there are authors that have screwed up and lost control of their book. But for the sake of this example, let's say they did not. But they are giving the publisher the right to publish the book for a period of time and to collect royalties. There's a split between, let's say the book, we'll make this math really easy. Let's say the book sells for $10. It doesn't, but for the sake of easy math, let's say it sells for $10. The publisher will keep anywhere from 50 to 60 or maybe 70%, and the artist or the author will get the remaining part. For my example, we're going to skip production costs. We're going to skip how much Barnes & Noble and the stores take. We're just going to leave that out. Those people do get paid as well. But the publishing house keeps the lion's share of the royalty. Why? Because they took the risk. They fronted the money on the front end, and they also are doing all the marketing, the publicity, the organization, and the distribution. They are making certain that it gets in all the stores, and they handle all of that. The author doesn't have to do any of that. But that $50,000 that the author gets has to be paid back out of sales. Eventually, when that $50,000 is paid back, meaning the book does sell well in a store, then any additional royalties that come in is also paid to the author. So Stephen King, there's no problem for him. He sells hundreds of thousands of books every year, probably 1 million books a year. I was working with a marketing person who worked on 50 Shades of Grey, and I was talking to her in my interview when she was working on my marketing plan, and she says to me, well, I asked her, I said, how many books does John Grisham sell a year? And she's like, she was like 800,000 books a year. Like, well, that's a lot of books. And so for him to get an advance of 50 or 100,000 or even $500,000, not a huge deal. He will earn that back. But again, they're not paying you for the book. They're loaning you money, and you still have to pay it back. But for most people, authors, it's not even a choice. It's not like you can just decide to be traditionally published. you have to be signed. And to get signed, you need an agent. And to get an agent, you need an agent has to agree to take you on. And there is way too many authors trying to get the attention of way too few agents. And I tried. I had an agent who did nothing, and then I didn't even get rejection letters from publishing houses. So going the traditional route was not even an option for me. So take that off the table. For probably 99% of most authors will never even get an opportunity to be traditionally published. So that leaves three other choices. Vanity publishing, which is a scam, in my opinion. These are companies that basically say, pay us anywhere from $2,000 to $50,000, and we'll do everything. In reality, they're going to do very little. It's going to be crap. You will probably lose control of your book and maybe even the rights to your book. And why would people do this? Because they gas you up and they pretend to be traditional publishers, and they prey on your ignorance that you don't know any better, and you are so desperate to get your book published. Now, they will promise you they'll get you in stores. They will not. They absolutely will not. What they're going to do is they're going to put you on Ingram Spark, which links you to like 40,000 basically online stores, including Barnes & Noble and Walmart. So they'll tell you they're going to get you in Barnes & Noble and Walmart. What they really mean is they're going to get you on Barnes & Noble and Walmart.com, which you can do yourself for basically $20. But these vanity presses will do that, and they will gas you up, and you're writing a check to them. That's crazy. We should do another whole show on vanity presses. I ended up suing one, and it was a horrible, horrible story. I won, by the way. The other choice is do it all yourself, which is what I did. And someday I will do a podcast of everything I did. But the middle road is hybrid publishing. So if you have no idea how to self-publish, or you don't have time, or you really don't want to learn, and you don't want to be taken advantage of by a vanity press, and you did not get signed by a traditional press, is hybrid publishing. So let's go over everything you need to do to get published. First of all, let's just assume you wrote the book. The book is done. To get published, you need an ISBN number. That's the little code that goes on your book. It's like that like barcode on the back of the book every time you buy something at the store. That is an ISBN number at the bottom. You need that code. So you can get the code yourself, but you have to know how to do it. So this goes back to the difference of, do you want to self-publish or do you want someone to help you? You also need a cover for the book. If you're not a graphic artist, you are going to have to hire someone to do it, or you can use AI. Using AI is the kiss of death. I knew it was the kiss of death, so I went and hired what I thought was a reputable studio, and we had a model in my cover, so an actual person. But they also, I found out later, used AI. I haven't really been torched online yet for it, but I could be, and I'm having the cover redone with no AI. But there are people who just use 100% AI, and they are getting torched. So be careful there. You should probably not use AI. So you have to design a cover. You also have to do typesetting to get the book, laid out properly so it can be printed. You can do it yourself. There is software to do it. It can look amateurish. You could do it in Word, and that can look okay. Or you can hire someone to do it properly. There's also the idea of editing it. Do not edit yourself. I mean, you should, of course, proof it yourself, but beyond that, you should have another set of eyes. You also need the idea of, getting an account set up at Amazon, assuming you're going to publish there, KDP account. If you want to have global distribution, you're going to need an Ingram Spark account. If you want to do any kind of drop shipping with your website, there are 2 or 3 different ways to do that. So this is distribution. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're going to need help. This is where a publisher comes in. And you can either go learn it all yourself like I did, or, again, if you didn't get signed by a traditional publisher, you would go to a hybrid publisher, and you could pay someone to help you with all these things. And that's what a hybrid publisher does. The last piece of all this is the marketing. Now, A hybrid publisher isn't necessarily going to do the marketing for you, although there are some that do, but you need a marketing plan. What is your plan to tell the world about your book? And that's where I needed help. I knew I needed marketing, but I didn't know how to do it. So that's the one part of my self-publishing piece that I knew was missing. So I did hire a couple of marketing people, one to put a plan together, another to help me with graphics, and another to actually help me on Twitch and Instagram to talk about my book, to actually help push it. And so those are the things that a hybrid publisher can do. Now, how does a hybrid publisher get paid? They do require some payment up front, not like a vanity press, because the vanity press is just taking your money and they're going to do a cover, which is going to be AI. They're going to lay it out, probably using, I don't know what kind of software they're going to use. They will typeset it. They'll get you an ISBN number, but an ISBN numbers are cheap. If you buy them in a pack of 10, I want to say they're like $200 or $300 for a pack of 10. They'll charge you $1,000 per number, which is ridiculous. They're marking it up and they're making a huge profit off of you. Of course, you don't know any better if it's your first go. They will give you a generic marketing plan that they pulled out of ChatGPT for free for them, and they send it to you and they customize it and make it sound like it's all impressive and customized to you. It's a lie. It's not. They will, what else will they do? Well, they won't do any actual marketing for you. And what else? Well, we went over the cover. And they won't create any of the accounts on Ingram Spark, that kind of thing. When they publish it, however, it'll be under their name, their publishing company. Now, maybe you care about that, maybe you don't, but you just need to know that it won't be your publishing company, it'll be their name. Now, if you go with a hybrid publisher, it will be published under that hybrid publisher's name as well. That's just something you should be aware of. Now, a hybrid publisher, what you're paying for up front is that the cover design, the editing part. Now, I had to pay for that stuff anyways. Like, I'm a self-publisher. I hired someone to do the cover, so I paid someone to do the cover. I hired an editor to edit the book, so I paid someone to be an editor. I had to go buy my ISBN numbers, so I paid Bowker to get my ISBN numbers directly. So either way, you're paying for those things, and I also hired a marketing person. So those are 4 fees that I paid even when I self-published. A hybrid publisher, you are paying those fees the same way. Now, the difference is I paid all of it, directly. A hybrid publisher, depending on which one you work with, might require a small amount up front and then a much less than I paid. But they also would, to make it affordable, they'll take a royalty split to sort of get paid on the back end until they make up the value of their contribution to what they did. Basically, it's a cheap way for those who don't have a ton of cash up front to get the same services that I got because I did have more money laying around. I just bought the services all together. You can get the same thing by basically spreading out the payments with royalties. You might say, well, why would you do that? Well, why would a hybrid press do that? Well, they're taking a bet on you. They are going to do the best job they can on the cover, and they're going to do the best job they can on the editing, so you have a high-quality product, and they are going to help with the marketing because they only get paid based off royalties. And if the book doesn't sell, they don't make any money, just like you don't make any money. So they have vested skin in the game. That's why a hybrid press is not a scam. It is a partnership with you. You succeed, they succeed. You fail, they fail. It's not the same thing as a vanity press. So when people say, oh, if they want money up front, it's a scam. It is not a scam. Vanity presses that want $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, those are absolutely scams. So what I would say is if you're bringing a book to market and you need a cover, you need an ISBN number, you need editing, and you need typesetting, and you need a marketing plan, you are going to either do it yourself, you're going to have to hire somebody. Even if you do it yourself, like I did self-publish, you're still going to need help, and you're still going to have to buy those services, or you go to a hybrid publisher. Either way, you're going to have to provide and get those services for yourself. So that's what a hybrid publisher is. Now let's go on to our story today. So Gina's book, Cinderella. Let me find that book here on Amazon and tell you a little bit about it. Everyone knows the story of Cinderella, of course, but hers is... This is told in, this is more for young readers. It's written for ages 9 to 18. This book has illustrations, and it was illustrated by Donna Strepp. And let's see here. Cinderella in this story is Ella. And let me just read the description here. Cinderella, a love story, is a fanciful and absorbing rewrite of the classic fairy tale. It's told here in a fascinating new version set in the 16th century. Young readers will love the borrowed magic that enables Ella to attend the ball, while older readers, including adults, will connect with the inseparable bond between mother and child, a bond that transcends time and space and even death. Ella's parents are young and in love, and the family's happy until Marie dies. Her father remarries, hoping to give his beloved child a mother's love and care. But Charles' new wife is cruel and an unaffectionate woman who cares only for her own two very backward daughters and turns her stepdaughter into a servant. 10 years later, when the king throws a ball in honor of his son, Ella's only chance at happiness comes from the most unexpected source. So, of course, that is the standard plot of Cinderella. Now, Gina has suggested that we read chapter 6, and that is what we are going to do. So, let me get the book open on Kindle here. By the way, the book is available on Kindle and paperback. It does not look like it's part of Kindle Unlimited, and I bought this book on Kindle, so I'm reading the Kindle version. Chapter 6. Early the next... Boy, that was a terrible way to start. Let me take a drink here. I'm sure drinking on a podcast is a great way to capture people's attention. Okay, chapter 6. Early the next morning, the sun streamed through the small garret window and woke Ella like a gentle caress. On her small bed, she yawned and stretched and tried to come to life. Just once, she wished she could stay in bed all day like Meg and Faylie did sometimes. She also wished she had a decent bed to sleep in, like she did when her mother was alive. As she dressed in her simple brown dress and apron, Ella thought about her life. She remembered the happy times with her parents when she was a little girl, the picnics in the summer, the sleigh rides in the winter, her father puffing his pipe and sending circles of sweet-smelling blue-gray smoke into the air. She remembered the stories he told her of his travels and of the different things he had seen and the people he'd met, and her mother would just sit close by and smile. Then, at night, Mama would carry her upstairs and, as she dressed her for bed, sing her little girl the most beautiful lullaby ever heard. Absently, as she straightened her room, Ella began to hum the tune of the lullaby. Over the years, she'd forgotten most of the words, but not the melody. Never the melody. It was all she had to hang on to. On her way to the kitchen to begin the morning chores, the girl recalled, too, the years after her mother's death. Before Madame and her daughters came upon the scene, times had been happy for her father and daughter, even though Marie was no longer here. They took long walks together and made hot buttered popcorn together and became the best of friends. Then Charles had decided to marry again. When Vera and her precious darlings came to stay, happy times ended. There were no more picnics or sleigh rides, no more fireside stories or long walks. For Ella, there was nothing but work, work, and more work from morning till night, until her free time at day's end was spent huddled in the cinders near the kitchen fire. Hence Meg and Faylie nicknamed her Cinderella. Her poor father was so henpecked that he was even forbidden to smoke his pipe. Madame said it stained the walls and other furnishings yellow. Among other things, he was forbidden to visit Maria's grave, and even speak her name in his new wife's presence. And, above all, he was not allowed to see or speak to Ella. "She's a servant," Vera once said, "and proper folk do not speak casually to servants." Thus Charles began spending more and more time away from home. To Ella, he became almost like a stranger she would love till the end of time. That was another of her wishes, that her father would be happy again. It just tore her apart to see him so sad and old-looking. All of a sudden, as she lit the fire in the kitchen and put the tea on for Madame and her daughters, there was a tremendous knocking at the front doors. Ella immediately tied her kerchief around her hair and threw a shawl around her shoulders, pinning it at her breast. She ran to answer the door. "Coming, just a minute," she called, wondering who could be here at 8 o'clock in the morning. She opened the door, and 2 trumpeters entered and blew a shrill blast through their instruments. Almost at once, a finely dressed young man came briskly in, and at the same instant, Charles and Vera came running down the stairs from their bedroom. They were both still in their nightclothes, and Vera had curlers in her hair. "Cinderella," the woman said sharply, "how dare you let strangers in at this hour without my permission?" Ella tried to explain. "Madame, But the stranger interrupted her. "Madame, do not blame the girl," he said. "I am the royal messenger. I have been sent by His Majesty the King, Robert, to invite all to the ball for Prince Andrew. It will be held both this evening and tomorrow evening." Vera's greedy heart beat faster as the messenger continued. "Tomorrow the prince will choose a bride from among all the eligible young ladies here." "Why, sir, I'm honored," she said, putting her hands across her heart, smiling humbly. The royal messenger seemed bored. "Madame, may I ask how many will be in your party?" Vera counted. "Let me see. Myself, Charles, Meg, Faylie. 4, sir," she said. "But Vera," Charles began, "what about?" She looked at him sharply, and he fell silent as his wife addressed the messenger. 4. "Very good, madame. I bid you good day, and shall see you at the palace at 7 o'clock sharp." And at that he clicked his heels, turned, and left the house with the trumpeters following him. Ella, on the other hand, stood rooted to the floor and stared out the window. She was completely dazzled by the whole affair. She had never seen anything like it in her whole life. But her stepmother brought her sharply back to reality. "Cinderella, don't just stand there. Close the door." She obeyed, and her father asked, "Vera, why did you only say 4 people? Ella's coming too." Vera smiled coldly at her husband. "You mean Cinderella?" she asked, feigning innocence. "Charles, don't make me laugh." She was so sickeningly false and sarcastic that Ella was tempted to slap her good and hard across the face. But she decided against it. It wouldn't do her any good anyways. So she took a deep breath and spoke in her own defense. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Why can't I go?" "The king said every eligible young lady must be there." "That's right, eligible," Vera mocked. "That's the key word. You, Cinderella, are far from being eligible. Why, just look at yourself," she went on. "You're filthy. Your hair looks like you haven't combed it in a month. And how do you expect to go to a ball, a royal ball, in that ragged-looking dress?" She paused for a moment, as if waiting for an answer, and then continued. "Well, speak up," she commanded. "Answer me." Ella looked sadly down at her rags. There was no use denying it. She was hopeless. If only she had at least one pretty dress. But what she wore on her back was all she owned. Leftovers from Meg and Faylie. "I suppose you're right, madame," she whispered at last. Vera smiled evilly. She had the girl right where she wanted her, under her thumb, along with her decrepit father. "That's a good girl," she said with false sweetness. "You go upstairs now and help your stepsisters get ready." Then she turned to her husband. "And you, dear, go find a decent suit to wear so I won't be embarrassed tonight." Charles looked at his daughter and sighed and meekly climbed the stairs to his room. His wife followed him, as did Ella too, and the gods looked on from above. That is chapter 6. I really like that. I haven't read Cinderella in a long time, so it seems like how the story went. I think the last time I read Cinderella, I don't think it was that detailed, so I like the dialogue. And if we just think back to what I was just saying on the podcast, conflict. You need conflict for a story to be interesting, and we definitely have it here. Well done, Gina. So this book, I did buy it, so I'm going to read the whole thing. And of course, we do know how it ends, and it ends happily. Well, the original one ends happily. I don't know how Gina's ends. I will read it. It is, how many pages is this thing? I can't tell from the Kindle, but I'm definitely going to read it. And of course, I will give a review on Amazon when I finish this thing, and I will let you guys know here whether it meets my criteria of having a hero's journey and good conflict and banter. Definitely banter. Again, I love banter. I like a hero's journey. I like conflict. Do not make it easy for your hero. And Gina has set it up where it's not going to be easy. Okay, you know what comes next. It is the Crimson and Ava Show. Welcome to the Crimson and Ava Show. Today, Crimson Jack Acorn is going to make breakfast for Ava Honeysuckle. You might recall yesterday he went to Mr. McGregor's farm and raided their kitchen. Now he's going to try to make breakfast. Let's find him in Briarwoods. Well, let's see here. I've got potatoes. I think I've got some eggs and some bacon here. Let's see. I've never cooked before. I know that potatoes take longest to cook here. Step 1, potatoes. Let me look at these. Rustic, very masculine, hearty, just like me. How could they be hard? They're just dirt food. Do you peel them or not? Probably not. Probably fiber. Let me just throw these in the water here. They bounce. Is that good or not? They're firm. I don't recall them being firm when someone else cooks them, so let me just throw them here in the water. I don't know how long they should cook. Maybe I should put some oil in there. Whoa, that's hot. Are they supposed to sink or swim? I don't know. Let me throw some rocks in here. Whoa. We'll come back to those in a second. Are they... I don't know how to get them back out. I don't have any kind of spoon. Let me try to... Well, we'll deal with this in a second. Let's deal with the bacon next. Now we're talking about bacon. Oh, the smell is wonderful. Oh, doesn't it smell wonderful? Let me get the fire going here. And at least I brought a pan with me. Let me lay the pan here. I know you just put the bacon right here on the pan. Oh, listen to that sound. It sounds wonderful. The smell is good. Ow! Ooh, I gotta flip it over. Ooh, ouch! That burns my hand, but it smells so good. Oh, let me have a little nibble. Oh, it smells. Another little nibble. Oh, it smells so good. It tastes wonderful. Let me have another nibble. I think I've eaten all the bacon. Well, let's try the eggs now. Crack the eggs. Whoa! Are the white pieces supposed to be in the egg? Let me try another one. I don't know how to crack these eggs without getting the shells in there. Maybe that's supposed to be. How do they do it? Let me check the potatoes again. They are boiling over here, and I don't know how to get them out. And they are now stuck on the bottom. And the eggs over here are bubbling. I don't know how to... Let me get a stick and stir them. Well, wait a minute. The stick bark is coming off into the eggs, and the bacon... Do we have any... No, I ate the bacon. Now the eggs... Well, I got to go back over here to the potatoes. The potatoes are now catching on fire. The oil has caught on fire. Let me get some dirt and throw that on the fire. Ava, don't come over here. There's fire. There's fire over here, Ava. There's fire. Run. Briarwood's on fire, Ava. Fire. Sorry, everyone. I have to go. The breakfast did not go as planned. Well, I don't know if there is a fire engine in Briar Woods, so find out next time whether or not the woods actually burned down. Maybe everybody has to go to the Big Apple. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Crimson and Ava Show, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay curious. Thanks for listening to Trash Panda Publishing Podcasts. And like all raccoons, stay curious.